AI Unscripted. This is a new episode, and as you have already seen in previous episodes, this is a podcast talking about AI, of course, but with a bit of a touch. We're focusing on AI from a business perspective. And today, again, I'm not alone. I'm here with Olivier Onclin, CEO of Belfius. Welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
You're new, relatively new in your role. So maybe a bit of context, who you are, what you've done before.
Think of me as a banking drummer or a drumming banker, because my early career choice had to be made between music and banking.
Mm-hmm.
I made the banking choice in the end. I will leave it up to the others to decide whether that was a good choice.
Yeah.
I had a career of 10 years at Euroclear, which I think the greater public knows by now,
Yes.
thanks to the Russia episode. And after 10 years, I actually joined the Dexia Group at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Was actually witnessing the financial crisis from very close. And then helped build Belfius to what it became today. And very proud with the team that we can share this successful story so far.
Yeah, and now you're CEO.
I will be CEO officially in a couple of days.
Yeah,
very privileged.
Mm-hmm. Of course, in an era, we are talking specifically on AI, but also geopolitically, macroeconomic, it's not an easy time. A lot of uncertainty. So specifically focusing on AI, what is the group, what is Belfius doing with respect to AI?
That's a question with a very long answer, because of course AI has come to the attention as now large language modeling. But we have been using AI since many years, I would say even since decades, since we introduced like automated decision making, which was heavily scripted in our credit decisioning models that we have been doing for a long time now. The last years we had a strong focus on making compliance very much more efficient, because the regulation was getting so intrusive with AI. And now we are in a phase where we are reinventing, I think, the digital interaction model with our clients, thanks to AI.
Yeah.
And I think that transition will be probably long, but it will be very impactful. If I make the parallel between in 2012, we made a decision of heavily investing in a mobile application because we were convinced that the digital interaction would heavily focus on a mobile interaction channel. That is absolutely the case and is standard, I would say, across the industry today. Well, tomorrow that interaction model is going to change to fully conversational. And that cannot happen without AI.
And that's basically the client experience. So because I think there are two aspects, typically, of course, also in your case, I guess, the efficiency gain and then basically the user experience. The older one, the beginning was maybe more an efficiency gain. Is that fair to say that it started with gaining efficiency and that now in the last years it's more the user experience, or is it not that binary?
No, I would say the two are very strongly connected, because if you really want to have a native digital experience for your client, it needs to be an end-to-end implementation, which actually automatically leads to the efficiency gain as well, or the avoiding of having more workload linked to a certain process. And that is what we have been witnessing now, where you could heavily simulate a digital experience by having a very interesting front-end experience. With the new conversational wave which is coming, it will need to be end-to-end implemented, and the investments related to that are much more important than what we have seen in the past.
And does that mean that the transformation journey that many other sectors, companies are going through also to get their own people on board with AI, that this is less of a challenge for Belfius?
Well, we have been preparing for that for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we have like a learning curve which has been steep and long, and we are ready, I guess, to do that deep transformation. And well, to tackle your question differently, I think it will be a serious challenge for some other companies. because that talent is not very widely spread, I would say, and even also for us will push us at a certain point to question whether we should also look for talent in a broader region than just the Belgian national territory.
And for the ones that haven't started it years ago as you have done, but what would then the lesson learned be for them? Because of course now it's already a completely different landscape. The speed of change is that fast that the train has already left to some extent the station. So how do they jump on that train still?
I think the only positive thing maybe is that technology has known such an evolution that you can reap the benefits of the technology which is at hand today. But technology in itself is not a solution, of course. It is a whole way of designing things and thinking about things that has to evolve together with it. And that takes some time and takes a lot of management attention and management involvement. So it is a journey, however you turn it. And so I would say get started and make sure everybody's involved.
And maybe talking about trust, because you're, of course, in a sector, highly regulated, but also trust is everything. And AI is not always the right avenue towards the truth or the outcome. How does that work, in fact?
We have been giving that a lot of thought. And I would say, I would break it down in 4 dimensions, trust. First of all, when you use AI, I think you need to be transparent about it. That is very important. People need to know that they are interacting with a machine and not with a human. That is absolutely number 1. 2, AI needs to come with a certain, I would say, a big degree of security. And of course, I'm talking about cybersecurity for us as a company, but I don't think the major problem for the future lies with banks which are heavily regulated and which have been preparing for major cybersecurity risk for quite some time now. We also need to think about the cybersecurity of the end consumer. And we see that this is becoming a societal problem, and we need to think about it. How can we get the society as resilient as possible in this new era of AI? And that involves not only banks, that involves telco players, that involves the end consumer as well, that needs to have a higher degree of understanding of what's going on in order to become more resilient. Another dimension I would say is that I don't see AI without any human link to it. What do I mean with that is that it's our strong belief that even if we think we can displace a lot of activity into a digital context with an AI-powered engine behind it, there needs to be a moment that a consumer can ask to go to a human intervention. And I think that is...
Also not in the end game, when basically in 2-3 years' time, that you still think it's still going to be at the end human.
Well, I think that the role of the human is fundamentally going to shift. But I think there will still be a human intervention needed, but that the thing that the human will bring will be again to some kind of basic humanity relationship, which AI will not bring. The last dimension in security might sound strange or not, I don't know in these times, it's sovereignty for me. I think we need to think, and especially the corporate world, about more independence in terms of this technology. This technology is becoming core to our functioning, is becoming core to our societal functioning. And so we need more European solutions also to be able to implement them. And so at Belfius, what we have chosen is when we have solutions that are at par from European providers, we will privilege European providers because it helps pushing the European industry forward in that industry that is becoming fundamental to our sovereignty.
And you have sufficient choice to buy Europe?
Well, if we're talking about large language models, there is one basically European solution. It's Mistral, and we have concluded a partnership with them. I cannot say we are exclusive with Mistral, but everywhere, and we keep on testing that the model is at par with other models, we privilege them. That's how we tackle it for the moment. But it's not only about large language models. There's a basic infrastructure which needs to be reviewed in terms of data centers. I think there is a lot of thought and work to be done also in terms of cooperation between European players of making that infrastructure more localized and more on European territory. Because it's a bit like the defense industry. It's that critical to functioning of society that I think we need to go in that direction.
And before you know it, you have replaced one dependency by another, and AI could be another one.
Exactly.
Maybe talking about a slightly different topic, and that's, of course, when we talked about in the past Bitcoins and so on, we talked about the role of banks as the middleman. Is that going to have an impact, yes or no? The question is whether AI will also not put another layer on that question. And I ask the question because as a consultant, we're also to some extent a middleman between data and sometimes governments, where you can ask the question, is that going to be a role going forward, or can they just cut out the middleman? So do you think that in terms of the basic role of a financial institution, that AI will again put an additional layer of complexity on that, on top of crypto, and that we may maybe a difficult question, but
if I look at it a little bit philosophically, I would say that AI is kind of making a democratic access to data possible for everyone. So if you think about that, then you would say in general the tendency will be that consumers get more informed and better prepared. So I more see it in an industry as ours, which is actually an advice industry, a human advice industry, that it will probably shift the role very much of what the human play will be in our industry. But as I said before, I'm a strong optimist in the role of the human in our industry. We have seen that, I'm going to make a strange parallel maybe, but with private banking. We started a private banking strategy in 2019, and we decided to develop a new physical distribution network, which was totally against the current. All banks were scaling down their physical networks. And what do we see? Where everybody was predicting that the physical networks would disappear, we strongly increased it, and there is a perfect linear correlation between our performance where we have this physical distribution point and where we don't have them. And so there you see that there is this role. People basically want to connect with other humans, especially...
But for a selective number of topics.
That's exactly. And so it will displace a lot of work, but it will not replace the human.
Yeah, which of course that means, well, triggers the question, also as a society as a whole, as a country as a whole, if you're going to be able to bring everyone to that new reality, of course. That's, of course, also a philosophical question, but an important one. Also.
Absolutely. And we have a tendency to over expect with regards to the speed at which it's going to happen. It's the same with digital in essence. And so I think it will happen eventually, but it's going to take some time. And we also need to make sure, and I think that's a kind of a societal responsibility, that we leave no one behind.
Yeah. And how do you see that within Belfius in terms of upskilling the massive amount of learning and development, I guess, that you also need to...
Yeah, we have, of course, for our own staff, we have learning and development, but we also see, and research clearly shows that financial literacy in itself in Belgium is really not going so well. And there we see a role also for digital platforms such as ours, which have a lot of reach in society, that we need to play some kind of a role of making this financial literacy more like a process that invites people to learn more about finance, and we are heavily thinking on how to make that a reality.
Which is an interesting one, because in previous sessions that we had in the podcast, we also talked to for example, the VUB, where indeed, then it wasn't the financial literacy, but it's basically also in terms of literacy and what AI really means. Because sometimes we are thinking it's a bit Google type of search on steroids, but I think it's a bit more, of course. So that's a very interesting topic. So how do you then see a group like Belfius? What will be Belfius in 3-4 years' time? How will you look like then?
Well, in 3 to 4 years' time, I tend to think that we overestimate the impact.
Okay.
Which does not mean that we don't not need to worry about this today.
Yeah.
Because as we said, it is a journey, and you need to transform a whole company in order to prepare for that journey. So I think AI will become naturally integrated in our day-to-day way of working, in our solutions, in our decision mechanisms going forward. But I don't think we will see in 3 to 4 years a company which is fundamentally different from what it is today.
Okay, so you're an optimist. That's basically...
I'm absolutely...
You have to, huh?
You have to be an optimist. I mean, it's a kind of a duty to be optimistic, and that's not something naive, but that's believing that we can create progress.
Yeah. And how optimistic are you then of the economic environment in a region like Belgium, but also Europe? Because of course, you talked about being a bit more independent technology-wise. Yeah. Of course, there's also the reality that a lot of players are not European. Do you see that we have the platform in Europe to leverage on that? A bit less capital intense, but more brain.
But you know, that's a question that actually occupies me a lot. Because what I find strange, so to say, is that people have a tendency to criticize a lot European politics.
Yeah.
And I do have to agree on one thing: we could do much better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is some kind of a tendency in all countries to push responsibilities down to lower levels. And so there's some kind of a dichotomy. Yes, I will get there. Between you don't want to push responsibilities to a higher level of European sovereignty, but you criticize Europe for not being able to do or to take the decisions it needs to take.
Yeah.
And so I think we should stop shifting all responsibilities to the political level. I think as a corporate, there's a lot of things we can do. We can instigate more cooperation between European companies. And I must say, I'm again there optimistic because of what's happening in the geopolitical world. I see discussions now that we can hold with other European banks about investments in mutualized platforms, which were not possible a couple of years ago. So there, I think we will see a shift in cooperation and the creation of some kind of European ecosystem.
But I think you're right, because in fact, we're always saying that someone else is the culprit, is the one that doesn't, but it's also looking at ourselves. That's a bit the point. But of course, there's also the fact that in terms of the integrated capital markets, that's also part of your sector, of course, but that's of course not that developed in Europe than it is in the US. And then you see, if you need 1-2 capital rounds, well, the people that we have, brainy people, they leave. So do you see that there we would be able to take steps forward? Because
we need a unified capital market, absolutely. But is that the silver bullet solution? I don't think so. Yeah. There needs to be a cultural shift as well. Because if you look, for instance, a statistic that always kind of strikes me is that for every 100 euros invested by a European household, there's 65 euros invested in the US. We should ask ourselves questions about that. What are we doing? We are financing growth somewhere else. We are pushing our champions to go somewhere else. Absolutely. And so I don't want to preach protectionism, but we need to be conscious about that. And we need to be more European conscious if we really want to instigate some kind of a change here.
Yeah, because we also see what the NATO spends. 1% NATO spend for us is 1%, almost 1%. Real spend, because it doesn't flow back. That's the similar philosophy. Yeah. If you were basically 18 again, imagine, what would you study now? I don't know what you have studied.
I studied commercial engineering.
Okay. Would you do it again?
I don't think so. to be honest. Well, the thing is, I mean, it's interesting because you kind of get to know yourself along the way and get to know your strengths along the way. Yeah. And so I probably would have done something completely different. Now, again, I'm very happy I studied that, because otherwise I would have not been sitting here, right? But I think I would have gone for something more creative as a study.
Yeah, you talked about drumming, but
Yeah, but like
but-
architecture, I'm
Yeah.
absolutely very interested and passionate about architecture. So I think I would have studied that. But I come from a time, and this might sound like a very old man, but where you could be a doctor, you studied economics or law. That were basically the three choices. We were not really aware of all the rest that existed. At least not me.
Yeah, and of course it's for us difficult to project you back.
Yeah.
I think the current environment, of course, is yeah, we are not AI natives or whatever else.
To say the least.
Yeah. Maybe to land a bit this conversation with a few very short, snappy questions. Don't think too long about the answers. You can, but it doesn't matter. The first thing that you do with AI on a day, what is that?
Well, my daughter asked for a ChatGPT subscription, paying subscription, before I was really very aware of what was going on. And since then, I share that subscription with her, and I go for a conversation every day in OpenAI just to keep myself a bit aware of what it can and what it can't do. And if you challenge it, it's pretty interesting to see what can happen.
I know what you will answer, but it doesn't matter. Studying in Belgium or studying in the US?
In Belgium.
Okay. Mastering in the US or mastering in Belgium?
Mastering in Europe.
In Europe, okay. What's the best alternative for Belgium in Europe then?
Oh, I don't think there's one single best alternative. There's many alternatives I would consider. I mean, I have a natural link to Scandinavia because I'm married to a Scandinavian. But there's also schools and programs in the south of Europe which are pretty impressive.
Okay. Bringing a sense of urgency to the people that indeed, maybe we are overestimating stuff today, but it will come in terms of impact. Fear or opportunity? What's the best thing to sell that argument?
I think it's definitely opportunity.
Yeah.
But it needs to be really like in it to also our educational system. And I don't think our educational system today is ready to make that opportunity a possibility. And
you already touched upon the fact that as economic players, we also have a role to play. But do you see changes happening there, and are they going fast enough? And do you need to start with the primary schools, or do you need to start with universities and work your way back? How do you where do you start? Because it's an incredible complex problem, of course.
I would start as soon as possible, because otherwise, anyway, we lose control of it. I think today we are in a situation where youngsters find their own way on how to interact with the digital world before they get some kind of a context or guidance in their schooling or educational system. And I think that should change.
Okay. And then I have the last question, which is probably, again, a topic for an entire session, but it is people don't see the return on investment. That's also when we look a bit at all kinds of barometers and surveys that we do, various industries, people are a bit underwhelmed about not the investment that they need to do because they are overwhelmed, but underwhelmed about the impact, the effect on their P&L. How do we turn that around? That people want instant satisfaction almost and say, okay, I spend a euro on AI. I want to have a euro saving or a euro extra growth. It's not that easy, of course, but how do you bring that across? Also as management, because you're investing in difficult times, money, and the return is not necessarily.
No, and it's a very, very good question, because if we look at our most successful developments, these developments have typically actually paid back over a period of, I would say, even 7 to 10 years. I'm going to take the example of our bank insurance model. We have heavily invested in our insurance model. Well, that took 10 years. If you make a business case, you never make a business case on 10 years. If you have a mandate as a CEO or a management team, you never have a mandate of 10 years. And so we are coming in a complex world where we have to make decisions which are far beyond actually our management time or our management term. And I think that makes the the world to what it is today, where we see this disruption that is possible by new players, because incumbents are not in a position where they make the right decisions. But I think we have been very happy with our shareholder, which has had until now that long-term view and has put us in a place where we could make the investments which we deem necessary in order to have long-term value creation. But I do realize that it's not so easy if you're chasing every trimester's result.
Exactly, because I see more and more groups that are basically saying, you need to have a return on investment almost in the year, euro for euro, but it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work, and for us, it's certainly not the main KPI we look at.
Okay, perfect. I will leave it here. Thank you very much for the insights.
You're very welcome.
Here and there a bit provocative, but that's fine. I like it. So, and yes, from my perspective, thanks for tuning in, and hope to see you soon again on another episode of AI Unscripted. Bye-bye.